Long before Enoch, the earth was filled with those who walked before him, men of great strength and knowledge, yet men who had also begun to turn away from their Creator. Adam, the first man, had lived for centuries, his existence a reminder of the paradise lost. He had walked with God in Eden, knowing him in the fullness of his presence, only to be cast out into a world marred by toil and sorrow. The generations that followed carried the weight of this fall, each man striving, building, and seeking their own way. The world itself was vast and untamed, a landscape of breathtaking beauty and untold danger. Towering mountains stretched toward the heavens, their peaks covered in a perpetual veil of mist. Rivers, mighty and ceaseless, carved through fertile valleys, nourishing the land with life. Great forests, dense with ancient trees, harbored creatures of all kinds, their calls echoing through the twilight. But amidst this splendor, darkness crept ever closer, as mankind turned away from the one who had spoken all things into being. Cain's descendants had built cities, forging tools of bronze and iron, advancing in arts and music, yet their hearts drifted further from righteousness. They dwelt in towering stone dwellings and fortified walls, filling their streets with the sounds of hammers on anvils, of chariots rolling over smooth pathways, and of voices raised in song that praised their own strength rather than the Creator's. Violence filled the land, and men delighted in their own power rather than the wisdom of God. But amidst this corruption, there remained a remnant, those who still called upon the name of the Lord, longing for the days when men had walked in harmony with him. And then came Jared, the father of Enoch. He had watched as the world darkened, as men indulged in wickedness, forgetting the God who had formed them. But Jared did not forget, and he raised his son with the knowledge of the Almighty, speaking of the days when men had walked unafraid in the presence of their Maker. The land they lived upon was vast and green, stretching out into golden plains where herds of animals roamed freely. The sky above was painted with hues of crimson and gold each evening, as though heaven itself longed to touch the earth once more. From his youth, Enoch was different. While other men labored for their own gain, seeking wealth, power, and renown, Enoch sought something beyond the material world. His heart burned with a longing for the divine, a hunger for something unseen yet more real than the ground beneath his feet. He desired communion with God, and in return, God found pleasure in walking with him. His days were simple yet profound. In the mornings, he would rise before the sun, lifting his hands in silent worship, his heart and mind attuned to the heavens. Throughout the day, as he worked and tended to his family, his spirit remained in a constant dialogue with the Almighty. And in the quiet of the evening, he would walk, speaking aloud as though God himself walked beside him. The forests near his dwelling seemed to whisper secrets to him, the rustling leaves carrying the presence of the divine. He would follow winding paths along crystal-clear streams, stepping over moss-covered stones, his soul lifted with the certainty that he was not alone. In a world descending into wickedness, Enoch shone like a beacon. He warned the people of their ways, pleading with them to turn back before it was too late. He spoke of righteousness, of a coming judgment, and of the mercy of God. Some listened with wonder, others mocked him. But none could deny that he was unlike any other. The marketplaces, filled with the scent of exotic spices and the sounds of haggling traders, would fall silent when Enoch passed, his presence a reminder of the path so many had abandoned. As the years passed, Enoch's intimacy with God only deepened. The line between the physical and the spiritual blurred, and his earthly existence became lighter, as if his feet barely touched the ground. The people around him noticed it, too. They marveled at how his face seemed to glow with an unearthly radiance, how his presence brought peace, and how the burdens of life did not seem to weigh him down as they did others. Enoch's prophecies became known among the people, for he spoke not only of the present but of things yet to come. He declared that the Lord would one day return with 10,000s of his saints to execute judgment upon the ungodly. He warned them that their deeds were not hidden, that God saw all and would bring justice upon the earth. Some feared his words and repented, but many hardened their hearts, unwilling to abandon their wicked ways. One evening, as he walked along the familiar path, something changed. The presence of God enveloped him more strongly than ever before, wrapping him in an embrace of unearthly warmth. The burdens of the world faded, the sounds of the earth dimmed, and suddenly, he was no longer bound by the weight of mortality. He did not taste death. One moment he was walking the earth, and the next, he was stepping into eternity. The people searched for him but found nothing. His footprints ended, but there was no trace of his body. Only the whispering wind remained, echoing the mystery of his departure. And so it was spoken among the generations, Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. Genesis 5 verse 24. In the days that followed, the villagers spoke of Enoch with reverence. His family mourned his absence but rejoiced in the knowledge that he had not been taken by death but by life. His words of righteousness remained, echoing in the hearts of those who had heeded his call. Some who once mocked him now looked to the heavens, wondering if they too could find the path he had walked. The generations that followed would remember him. His great-grandson, Noah, would carry forth the legacy of faith, walking in the ways of his forefather, standing against the corruption of his time. And when the floodwaters would come to cleanse the earth, Noah would remember the words of Enoch, the man who had walked so closely with God that he was taken into his presence without suffering death. His story was not one of conquest or kingship, nor of great earthly feats, but of a quiet and unwavering devotion. Enoch showed that to walk with God is the greatest journey of all, a journey that leads not to death, but to life everlasting. And though his physical presence was gone, the essence of his faith remained, whispering in the wind, calling others to follow the path of righteousness, the path that leads to God. By faith Enoch was taken from this life, so that he did not experience death. He could not be found, because God had taken him away. For before he was taken, he was commended as one who pleased God. Hebrews 11 verse 5.